Hello and welcome to another episode of the AWS Ninja. This episode I would like to discuss a few of the ways you have in order to run redirects back to the browser. So imagine you have a simple HTTP application and from time to time you want to redirect the user to another URL. Maybe it's an external URL, maybe it's another page on the application, maybe something changed on the application structure and now whichever request went to URL 1 needs to go to URL B. The most simple way to do that would be through a simple redirect. Basically an HTTP response, a 301 or a 302, with a location header stating that the request should go elsewhere. Now, there are a few ways to do that if you're using CloudFront. So up until recently, the only way you could run basically was by using Lambda Edge. So Lambda Edge certainly has its merits. It does has a cost, obviously, and the cost is based both on the runtime, so how long does the function run, and how many executions you have. Plus, there are some downtime, cons to using Lambda Edge, such as cold starts. If it's the first time the function runs in a while, it will take a few milliseconds extra to kick off and then run. And obviously that might be a bit, of a negative impact on your application. But the positive, obviously, with Lambda Edge is that you can do pretty much anything you'd like. So in this case, I have a simple Python script that responds with a 302. And then I can associate the function to run after a caching decision has been made. So basically, when running on CloudFront, each request goes through 4 different phases. As the request comes in, that's the viewer request event where I can run a function. As the request goes out of CloudFront towards the origin, that's the origin request event. As the request goes back from the origin, that's the origin response event. And as the response goes out from CloudFront towards the user, that's the viewer response event. So 4 different points, which I can capture the request and deal with it. So the positive thing with running Lambda Edge is you can run basically an event after a caching decision has been made. That means that whatever the Lambda function did will be cached. So all subsequent requests will basically have the exact same response and it will be served out of cache. So in this case, on the very first call, let's say to a specific URI where the user comes in, Lambda will be invoked. It will return a 302 with this YouTube channel location, which is my YouTube channel. But all subsequent requests coming after that will be served with this exact same response, but from cache. So no more Lambda invocations required, as long as the request is fresh enough to remain in CloudFront's cache. If there are like 10 days between requests, probably you'll need to invoke a Lambda, but then if you have one request every 10 days, cost will pretty much be 0. So the way to go about it is once you have a function, you can go to CloudFront and pick whatever behavior you want to put the function on. Obviously, your code can be a lot more complicated with if conditions and stuff like that in it. But basically, you choose the behavior where you want to associate the function. You scroll all the way down, and then you can pick and choose to have the origin request event associated with a Lambda Edge function, the function that we just saw. Those of you with a keen eye would see that I have another association already on the CloudFront functions, on the viewer request with a CloudFront function, which is another way to run code at the edge. CloudFront functions are a way to run lightweight code, super fast, super cheap, at scale. One of the limitations is I can only run it on the viewer request or viewer response. So no benefits from using cached responses. You cannot associate a CloudFront function on origin request or responses. You can also only do so on viewer requests or viewer response. And the way it would look like is very similar to your Lambda Edge functions. Basically, you have to write them in JavaScript, but if you have a look, so this is the function, a very simple JavaScript function, again, returning a redirect, a 302 with the location header, pointing at my YouTube channel. And then I can go ahead and associate that function. So what happens once I have a hit on CloudFront, before a caching decision is made, this CloudFront function will get invoked and return with a redirect. That means that each and every request will be serviced by this function, right? As opposed to the Lambda Edge request that only got served once and then the response got served from cache as you had more and more requests come in. So these are the basic two ways, the easiest ways, the most straightforward ways to run redirects with CloudFront. Another way, which is often, dismissed or not thought of, is by using AWS WAF. So especially if you already use AWS WAF and each and every request already goes through WAF and you already pay for these requests because that's the way WAF is built, you can have a simple redirect implemented with the WAF rule. And it's much more intuitive, maybe more user-friendly, doesn't involve any kind of code. So let's say I already have a simple web ACL with a bunch of rules in it. In this case, no rules, but you get my idea. One thing I can do is I can add my own rule, a new rule, simply for redirections. And that's due to the fact that now we have, with AWS WAF, we have something called custom responses. So for example, let's say I want to have anytime I get a request into /login, I want to redirect it to my authentication service. So I can add my own rule. Give it a name, and then match the statement that says if the URI starts with login, right? So what I want to do next is basically I want to block these requests because these requests do not need to get all the way to the origin. So I block them, but instead of responding with the basic 403 forbidden response from AWS WAF, we can now have a custom response. And I want to enable that, and I want to say, okay, I want to do a 302 with a new header called location, and this header will contain login services.com. This means that whenever a request goes into /login on my application, WAF will respond with a 302 and send the user out to the login.services.com domain, whatever that means. And that's a very, very easy, intuitive way to run redirects, and you can easily add more of these. You can have more complicated conditions, you can have ands and ors, and you can have specific geolocation or specific IPs or header values or query string parameters. You can even base your condition based on JSON payloads. So basically you can treat the request, you can look at the body of the request, and you can use a JSON, and you say only if a specific JSON element or type of content appears, I would like to redirect the user to my authentication service or another API or whatever it is that you need to send the user to or the application to. That was pretty much it for redirections in CloudFront. So just to summarize, we had Lambda Edge, which allows you to do a bunch of things, and it can also, the responses, the redirects can also be stored in cache. So super useful if you have a multitude of users. CloudFront Functions, if you have not that many users and you don't mind paying for each and every request, but it's dirt cheap at 10 cents per million requests, and you get the first 2 million free every month. Or you can use WAF, especially if you already use WAF for application security. That was it. With any questions or comments you might have, please leave them below.